Now, put simply, if you want to look at the political framework of what all of this is about, it's not just about the 30 minutes of people who watched the speech like you did tonight. It's about what they will hear on the radio in the morning. And one of the key things the government has made very clear is that Australia right now is doing incredibly well. In fact, unemployment right now, 1 year into the pandemic, is better than when the Liberal Party took office in 2013.
Ahead of any major advanced economy, Australia has seen employment go above its pre-pandemic levels. At 5.6%, unemployment today is lower than when we came to government. This is remarkable.
Now, put simply, the ultimate sign of whether the joint is okay or not is how many people have a job. Yes, important questions about how good that job is, but if our unemployment rate was anywhere near what the worst predictions were 12 months ago, we would be in a world of pain. But because of the monies that have been spent since the start of the pandemic, which are doubled down on tonight, the Treasurer was clear to say that all of these people, when you talk about winners and losers, are the people who didn't end up on the dole queue, and that's a net win for the country.
JobKeeper kept 3.8 million people in their job. JobSeeker helped 1.5 million people without work. And the cash flow boost supported 800,000 businesses and not-for-profits. And additional payments went to millions of pensioners, carers, veterans and others on income support.
And it worked. Our economy in the last 3 months is outgrowing countries including like China, the United States, the UK. So put simply, as we are leading when it comes to the total number of cases in this country when it comes to COVID, we are leading in terms of the rest of the world when it comes to the economic comfort that we live in right now. Now, all of this is only made possible by racking up huge debt, no question about it. And the Canberra bubble will want to obsess about the philosophical rights and wrongs of the party that came to government off a want to fight debt and deficit, now having record in both scenarios, of course completely ignoring the fact that a meteorite, which might have come from Wuhan, China, hit the Australian economy and the Western world. So are we about to be having a huge debt hill to climb? You bet. But amazingly, perhaps the most interesting number that I saw today was before the budget was even released, and it was from a left-leaning opinion poll in the Turnbull Times, otherwise known as The Guardian for first-time viewers. When Australians were asked, put simply, what's your preference here, to cut debt or continue the support from the pandemic that the Treasurer lists? 80-20. That's the truth. So a little bit like, do you believe in climate change? Absolutely. Are you willing to pay more? Absolutely not. That's the truth. Now, all day, every day, you'll get heads nodding about how big debt and deficit is, and we all know what the consequences are. But in terms of the raw politics, and there is an election coming, people just don't care. Rightly or wrongly, that's the reality, and you know I'm about the reality. Now, the 5 big things about this budget that I think will be the things that we will remember 24 hours from now, as opposed to the blitzkrieg of noise right now. There is a massive amount of money for aged care. We saw out of the Aged Care Royal Commission a real need to do this. And that money is going to, in part, be billions of dollars that will create an extra 80,000 new home care places, which means people watching us right now who are on that precipice of, can I stay at home for another couple of years or do I go into aged care? An extra 80,000 people will be able to stay at home.
We commit $17.7 billion in targeted and practical new funding to significantly improve the system. We will fund another 80,000 new home care packages, bringing the total to 275,000 home care packages that will be available. We will increase the time nurses and carers are required to spend with residents.
The other one is that if you right now are watching us and the kids left home a long time ago, and if you're over the age of 60, there's a way that you can put an extra $300,000 into your superannuation. Now, sure, it's going to be painful in terms of the memories, but if you sell your family home, you will be able to put that $300,000 tax-free into your superannuation, which of course you can bleed out for the remaining years of your self-funded retired life. That's a big change. You're not going to see that a lot in the newspapers, but that's one that's going to affect an awful lot of people as you work out what you're going to do in the next little phase of your life. Also, 10 million people are going to get a tax cut. Now, I always love when you can do this one of two ways. You can do the 52 weeks a year, or you can do the 365 days a year, which gets you down to the 4.5 cents or the $4.5 billion. But here's the straight, okay? If you earn between $48,000 and $90,000, single or as a couple, you'll end up somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 better off each and every year.
Low and middle income earners will receive up to $1,080 for individuals or $2,160 for couples. More of their money in their pockets to spend across the economy, creating jobs.
We need more tradies in this country. We need more kids to commit to becoming tradies once they leave school. This budget puts a lot of money to help make that happen. In fact, an extra 170,000 places around the country for people to become tradies. Practical, and thank goodness for anyone who's planning home renovations, or maybe you just have a blocked sewer. These sorts of things become practical and also an absolute shed load of money for the kids that'll be able to do this. Now, I repeat, the debt picture is one that is going to be the shadow that people will see over this whole budget, but I point back to where those opinion polls were in terms of the politics, okay? Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong, just saying how this thing lands. So this year, $729 billion debt. June 2025, $980 billion. Frightening. Dollars debt. But as you saw, 80-20 people wanted to, because put simply, the view is that there are holes in the boat, they need to be patched. We need to make sure that we can continue pushing the water out of the boat so we are competitive as the little island nation that doesn't have much of the virus around. Now, people were asked to rank, again in the Essential poll today, what they care most about. And clear margin, 3/4 of people wanted serious action on aged care. Tick, it's happening. 60% of people wanted women's safety. Tick, big amount of money coming through here. Local manufacturing, nothing specific, but if you know the details of things like instant asset write-offs, the ability to write off losses, that's big. And of course, again, the same can be said for small business. Alas, renewables, no huge amount of money there, but you can't expect that out of this government. If you want that, you can vote Green, and you already are planning to, and this budget wouldn't mean anything. And again, not even half of people even asked about the intensity of things they care about was to cut debt. Now, a couple of other quick ones here. If Australia was a business, the Australian government takes in $445 billion. 1 year. $445 billion. That is up in the past 12 months of $31 billion. But what about what it spends? $589 billion. Are you holding on to something? Because this will frighten you. Before I show you, what do you think is the number one thing the Australian government spends its money on? Health, education, defence? No. Welfare. $209 billion is spent on welfare. That is the number one expenditure by 2-to-1 in the Australian federal budget. We still compensate people for a carbon tax that hasn't existed for years, let alone health, education and defence. So put simply, politically, how can you find a loser in this budget? If governments are about political solutions, then this thing ends up being a winner. If this is about economic management, well, they can point to the success of the past 12 months. They can point to all of those facts like the ones I mentioned at the very start, that without the spending that's happened in the past 12 months that gets doubled down in the next couple of months, millions of people will have been on the dole queue. And the more that we know about the dole queue and the truth of ageism in Australia, the older you are, the harder it is to get a job back in the private sector. So, debt's going to be a big issue, but I repeat, for the third time, politically, it is not as big an issue as the ideological argument is going to be, which doesn't mean we don't have it. That's just where I think this thing is starting to land.